All right, so thank you everybody who's joined us right now. We'll be starting our webinar in about 2 or 3 minutes. We plan to start at 2 or 3 after the hour. Currently, you guys came into the room on mute. If you got any questions before the webcast starts, please use the Q&A console or the chat feature to send us a question. We'll be starting, as I said, about 2 or 3 minutes after the hour, so you still got plenty of time to grab your coffee or water and sit back for our presentation here in just a couple minutes. So we appreciate you guys coming in. Again, thank you to those who just came into the room. We'll be starting our presentation in about a minute. We're going to give a couple more people opportunity to come in and sit down. If you guys got any questions until we start, please use the chat feature. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Then again, thanks for joining us. We'll be starting here in about 60 seconds. Thank you. And again, those who are still joining us, thank you. Please have time to take your virtual seat. We're starting here in about 30 seconds or so. If you guys got any questions, please let us know. Use the Q&A console, use the chat feature. Send us a question if you're having any issues. We'll be starting just a second or two. And we do appreciate you guys' time today. And we're starting here momentarily. All right, I believe we've got a good quorum of people right now. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you're at in the country today. My name is Rob Branson. I'm our channel marketing manager here at Cloudian, and we're excited that you're taking a few minutes out of your day to attend our webinar on ransomware protection for unstructured data. Ransomware has become more of a common word that you see across the internet, media, daily conversations these days that companies are having focused around their data. It's very common that companies, at times do not even think or worry about their data when it comes to ransomware. They think it's never going to happen to them until that unfortunate day that it does. So this year, we've seen a lot of staggering attacks around the world when companies are not taking the preparations to have their data set up and doing it in a change now to make sure the data is protected in a very diligent way. So the theme of planning is a great segue to our presenters today, so they can give you great insight and ideas on how our joint technology can make you better aware to protect your data. So today we've got a pair of speakers lined up to give you a great overview on our joint solutions and technology. Sean Fisher, who's our federal cloud architect from Cloudian, and Dave Hughes, who is our director of sales engineering from RackTop Systems, are going to be providing you a gauntlet of information on the effects of ransomware and how it can directly affect your data. So in just a second or two, I'm going to turn the keys to the presentation over to them. But I want to give you a little bit of housekeeping items that you have, so give you the heads up. When you came into the room today, all phones or computers were placed upon mute. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please use our Q&A console. We'll answer all questions at the end of our presentation today. We have plenty of time to answer any and all questions that you may have. So please feel free to ask away. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dave Hughes. Dave's going to give you a little bit of background on himself as well as RackTop Systems. Dave, presentation's all yours.
Thank you, Rob. So, of course, I'm Dave Hughes, Director of Sales Engineering here at RackTop Systems. I've been in IT since, I guess it was 18, 19 years old. Was also in the Army as well. So I do have a background in the federal government. I've been a customer, worked for a multinational real estate company, as well as a multinational legal firm. Worked as a reseller of bar, as well as I've worked at a lot of different startup and telecom industry back in the day. I'm headquartered here in DC, and I work around the country here, helping and assisting with our other staff out in the country. And I'll hand it over to Sean.
Greetings. My name is Sean Fisher. I've been a federal sales and federal operations architect for the last 20 plus years. I have prior service in the U.S. military, and I've worked for many federal agencies over those 20 plus years, including Department of Defense, Department of State, and I'm pleased to be working now with Cloudian, which is quite possibly one of the most innovative companies on the planet. We are a object storage solution that provides software-defined storage. I'll be talking a little bit about our solutions towards the end of the presentation, but just wanted to say hi and thank you all for joining. Next slide, please. So we know about ransomware. We all have heard about it in the news. A lot of us have been hit by it. We are no exception, right? We are in the space with you all. It is terrifying out there. These ransomware software applications and the ransomware agencies now, the actual organizations that are designed to break corporations and extort them. It's really bad, and we understand that. So part of the influence and part of the crux of this presentation is to provide you all with a little bit of ammunition on how you can protect yourselves and how you can save your data and keep from paying the extortion and paying the ransom for your data and your enterprise's livelihood. So we've seen in the past handful of years since COVID-19 hit, over a 600% increase in ransomware phishing emails. So they're trying to get in, they're poking and prodding at all of the external areas. Usually they get in, if you've been targeted, they will probably find a 0-day or some way to get in. And once they're in, they can sit there for a long time before they're detected. Most of our tools and capabilities that we have as enterprises and organizations are generally failing us in these attacks. It's really bad. We're seeing ransomware damage across enterprises, across federal agencies, exceeding $20 billion for downtime, for cost of proprietary information, industrial secrets. And that was just in 2020. We haven't received all of the downloaded information from what's happened so far this year. It's really bad out there, and we understand, and it's only getting worse. Next slide, please. So as ransomware becomes more sophisticated, as these groups become more organized, we've probably heard the name REvil in the tech space, in the security space. They are one of the most advanced, highly organized ransomware organizations. You can do a customer request, become a ransomware customer, and then allow them to help you set up your Bitcoin wallets, have them help you set up the 0-days to get into agencies. And we're seeing quarter by quarter, the ransomware payments are going higher and higher. Next slide, please. Once they're in, they start looking around, right? So 250 days, 2 weeks, 2 days, they start looking around and what they can get. They start downloading huge amounts of data out of enterprises and out of agencies. They start immediately downloading all of your proprietary information, your emails, your Word documents, your PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, Oracle databases, SQL. And once they have locked your data out through their ransomware encryption, then they start extorting you. And they say, well, you can pay to unlock this data, but you can also pay us to not have this data leaked out into the world. We're all familiar with how Sony had all of their data leaked onto the internet. There were scripts, there were employee payroll records, all that stuff comes out. And once it's posted on the dark web, it usually takes little or no time to start leaking out onto the public internet. All that information soon becomes available to everybody. So what are some of the things that agencies and corporations are doing to protect themselves? Next slide, please. They get ransomware insurance, or they get cyber insurance, and they understand that if they get hit, they can pay these ransomware guys to unencrypt their data, and sometimes they can even pay to have extortion mitigated. Unfortunately, the insurance agencies are tired of paying all of this stuff. They're being hit more and more, and insurance companies, you know, they like to protect their own assets. So they're now no longer going to insure companies that pay ransomware. Next slide, please. And the Department of Treasury has basically said, if you do pay for ransomware, you may receive sanctions against your company. You're basically paying a criminal organization. And the Department of Treasury is saying, well, we might sanction your entire company. It's pretty bad out there, and we understand that. So what are agencies doing to try and help themselves? Next slide, please. Well, we follow best practices. We patch our operating systems. We patch our web servers. We have good antivirus installed. We train our employees not to click on email links. We tell our employees only go to trusted sites. Never trust things that you can download that have been offered to you, or going to disreputable sites to download things. It is your standard practice. And of course, back everything up. However, this isn't doing it anymore. The bad guys are still getting in. They're still taking data. They're still encrypting agencies. They're spear phishing. They're whale phishing. It's a mess out there, and our tools are failing us. Next slide, please. So we need something where if the bad guys are in the data stream, if they're watching the bits fly by, we need something that's encrypting the data in flight. We need something that once the data lands on its storage target, how can we protect that data? Well, we encrypt that data at rest. We need to encrypt and protect and air gap the encryption keys themselves. We need to make sure that those keys are not on the servers that are serving those keys. We need to make sure that anything that is being backed up is immutable. So even if you do get hit by ransomware, you can protect that. We need to make sure that our NASs, our file shares, our Z drives and G drives are protected and are segmented. So if bad guys get in, they can't hop over some of the walls that you've put in place. We need to make sure that ACLs are in place so that an administrator who has God privileges on your network can't get user files, right? There needs to be some sort of way to protect from against administrative password leaks or rogue administrators and bad guys that are in your network. We need zero trust. Right? We need to have a data-centric, zero-trust capable solution and zero-trust archive abilities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to RackTop, who's going to talk a little bit about their solutions, and Dave is going to talk a little bit about how they can help agencies and corporations protect their data from ground zero.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. So at RackTop, we provide a NAS solution that really enables that zero trust capability at the data layer. So in the typical or traditional sense of zero trust, once you're authenticated to the network, you're inside the network, you've done your double encryption, you're now unencrypting data, you're still starting to access that information, you're trusted. And the problem with that is, of course, the insider threats, or you may have walked in your laptop from the outside, working from home in this pandemic, and had some type of ransomware or virus that's been secretly hiding there for months on end, waiting for you to plug into the network. Once you've authenticated and now you're a trusted entity, those viruses or those ransomware attacks start creeping around and looking for access and file access, or what they can actually take away from you or encrypt and hold you for that ransom. So what we've done is implemented a zero trust capability around the data layer itself. So now between the end user and the data, we are there watching everything. We see everything that goes on, every transaction, every read, write, copy, move. We see everything and miss nothing from a file access standpoint. We become an added sensor on the network when you got your back turned, or you're not really watching that big cache of data, that you only have a couple admins managing the storage infrastructure, but they're not sitting there watching data and transactions and what people are accessing all day. You're a trusted entity on that network. And then we also provide the capability when you have large caches of information and data and you don't know what that is, we have a user behavior analytics built into our NAS protocols where you can assess and look at real-time information about what users are doing, or look at dark data and why are users, nobody's touched this information in months or years. Why does it need to be on-prem? And how can I archive this off to minimize surface area of attack in a situation? Next slide, please. So the use cases we start talking about, of course, NAS is great for organizational file shares. But you also got all these other different use cases that NAS is really leveraged and used for, especially in HPC medical imaging, which is under huge attacks these days. And then, of course, insider threats from the federal government. That's what the most, let's say, the most persistent threat in the U.S. government would be, is somebody inside stealing information and selling those secrets to an external entity. So how do you watch and maintain secure and privileged access if you're letting everybody in, that's authenticated to the network. So if you can pop over to the next slide. So what we've done is, again, like my founders come from those 3-letter agencies. They were customers as well as users, and they were in charge with building and designing data storage and data architecture for the federal governments while in theater, while in these different locations. The biggest problem that they faced was it was kind of easy to secure the application in the network. But when it became to the data itself, there wasn't a lot of solutions that really focused on protecting it and making sure that it doesn't walk away or it doesn't get ransomware attack. So they sought out to design and architect a storage solution that builds those security protocols into the actual storage system without displacing or impacting performance to providing data access. So just like the NSA, in God we trust, everyone else we monitor. That's what our storage solution will do. And it's built with the NIST principles. So everything that maps to NIST, the National Institute of Standards, for data compliance, we map to, let's say, CMMC, ITAR, HIPAA. Any type of requirement that comes off of that is frameworked off of the NIST requirements. So our box is our NAS appliance is out of the box, secure and compliant. You can go to the next slide, please. So of course, based on their experience, they built this system to provide those capabilities to prevent that insider threat from not only stealing information, but altering information. Just think of, what the certain attacks may do. They might just try to ground a fleet of the Air Force. They might try to access CMMC type of level data where there's an external workforce welding parts for the F-35 Raptor. How would I know that some external entity has gone in and actually changed a weld point from one point to another that could, in a few years, really ground the entire fleet of F-35 Raptors? You have to be able to watch and see every interaction, every single data point, and every single access point to what we prize and what we hold valuable, which is our data. That's why people pay the ransom. It's valuable to them. The second reason is they don't know what was actually inside that data because it's a dark hole these days. People just keep dumping more into it without having any visible access or insight on what that data or information is or how it's actually being used. Go to the next slide, please. So the brick store itself provides SMB protocol as well as NFS on the front end to the applications or to the end users. So for those 3-tier applications like legal firms or healthcare industries that leverage PAC systems or data mining systems, those applications need those types of protocols because that's big data mining. With that, we actually have that user behavior. So the other key feature inside the brick store is we see every interaction. We treat every interaction with every request for a file or access to a file as a zero trust. I may not trust you 2 seconds from now because you are logged into a different location or your account is now accessing the same data, but from China for some reason. So that is something that we look out for and we watch to guarantee that there is no impact to security on your data. Because we have all that information, we can now act upon that. So our active defense for ransomware and insider threat is built into and is hinged off of the actual user behavior capabilities. And everything is also real-time auditable. So you can go back and map directly to if you had a HIPAA or iTrust or ITAR type of compliance and regulatory for who has access to what, everything's real-time auditable. You can hand it off to an auditor, and it's also real-time editable. So you can go in and an auditor can make changes to those who has or who's supposed to have access to those files. On the back end side, of course, a true enterprise storage appliance will always have file indexing and secure restore. We take that to the next level where we actually index the information as if it were a catalog or a backup system. So you can do real searches and finds for individual files and restore data in the event that if the file gets deleted or it goes missing. But the thing is, the administrators don't actually have access to open and read the information. They can only see just the file name itself. Policy-based snapshots are a part of that. So everything is done at the block layer, and it does not impact performance when you do localized snapshots and replication. Replication can also have an alternative retention period where I may only want to hold 1 week's worth of snapshots locally, but I might want to hold 10 years off-site if you have that much capacity. Or we also, because of we were customers in buying 20 different technologies to make my storage work, you don't have to purchase a WAN optimizer for the replication capability. We've already included WAM optimized replication and an optimization capability that can take high latency, high bandwidth links and make it so that you're not impacting that area. And then for the real big component on here is if you have a big hole in the ground where you're putting all your data, I mean, how long has that data been there? Why is it still there? And how do I know what needs to be retained on site? I want to always keep the data that I use the most frequently close. So how can I take that information and archive that off to another secure location, such as the Cloudian capability? I have the S3 protocol out the back end, so I can take what's on the production side and archive that to an S3 policy. Next slide, please. Now, flexibility in deployment. Not everybody has data center environments. Not everybody has, or they might have already had an investment in storage technologies. We've made it very flexible to actually leverage and use the Brickstore software capabilities, because we do offer our appliances in a virtual instance where you can house them and they can live and run in a VMware or an AWS or a Microsoft Azure in a cloud instance, but you can also do that on-prem. So we support all the major hypervisors to run a Brickstore SP appliance. We also realize that not everybody has not everybody has the funding or the money to go out and purchase this right away, but they may already have a big investment in storage through another SAN vendor. So we can actually front end any SAN vendor with our gateway appliances and make use of that existing capacity and existing investment in storage and give you that secure NAS capability. And then, of course, the traditional sense where it's a bunch of iron, of course, disk trays and controllers, highly available configurations, we do supply that as well. Next slide, please. So again, if you look at the left-hand side, these are the enterprise capabilities that you need to have when you're talking about enterprise tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 storage capabilities. So we do support all the major protocols as well as NFS 4.2 with security labels. We do support SMB 3.2 as well with now the FIPS level end-to-end encryption from the user to the actual data. We do support iSCSI out the back end as well as fiber channel to create that gateway configuration when leveraging existing investments in storage capabilities. On the right-hand side, you see the lighter blue areas. Those are all the compliancy and security areas that we really focus and key in on how and what we do with data to protect you from a catastrophe. Because I call these now that people used to think a meteor hitting the data center is a disaster. No, a ransomware event is now a disaster. If you think about the way that people or the news has been reporting some of these, is we discovered there was a ransomware event. We ran to the data center, we turned everything off. Well, you've just disrupted, just like a disaster would have, your entire workforce, as well as maybe who you're selling to or you service in the industry. That disruption, that's a disaster, and you need to be able to recover from that. So you need to plan for disaster recovery, as well as you need to plan for insider threat and ransomware protection. Next slide, please. So quick screenshot of our user behavior analytics. Again, we think of this as a sensor or a forensics tool that we give you on your data. So every amount of file or data that we house on our system, we are responsible for auditing, compliance, and giving you feedback on who's accessing that information and making use of it. So you can look at days, times in the week or the month. You can look at one single file and see every single user that anybody had ever had access or audited or edited or anything about that individual file. So this is a huge forensics tool about your data. We see everything. Next slide, please. And because we have that type of information, we can now make use of that and prevent issues or ransomware. Here's a quick screenshot. I've actually done a couple demos of the more recent threats, like the live demos on actually how our system can stop real time. This is not stopping it and waiting for a snapshot 6 months later to recover. No, if there is an event, our system will detect it real time, disable the user that's infected or attacking the storage appliance, and then report on exactly who it is, where they're coming from, and what was infected or compromised. We will stop that real time and bring situational awareness to everybody involved in the IT data center. Again, when I was in the IT industry, when I was actually just an admin user, I know the old, we got ransomware, or we have a virus run to the data center and turn everything off. I mean, it's kind of funny to say this, but it was one of those butt puckering moments back in the day where your weekends is shot. You're now having to go back and restore and recover data and find out where things have begun. We can do this real time with the Brickstore SP. We can stop ransomware. We can show you exactly what was compromised, and we can recover that within minutes with zero disruption to an end user or business while an attack is happening. We call this resilience. So cyber resilience, I'm able to keep taking these attacks, or I'm being attacked, and I can still operate and serve information and keep my business alive. Next slide, please. The second piece of that is, insider threat. How do we know that? Because I might have the administrative credentials to everything. Just think of, a perfect example, of course, was the Edward Snowden event. They've made movies about it, so everybody knows he was an insider threat. He was able to gain access, or he had access to everything. He could pull down or go to locations and access files, and nobody was really watching. There was a room with cameras, but what was he doing on the system? What data was he accessing? Nobody knows. How much information did he get away with? It took months, if not years, to figure out what was involved. And that was only found out, most of it was through leaks on the internet. So we can actually look at and show you real time and stop even administrative access. If they're opening files, browsing around, jumping around from folder to folder, trying to pull down data, we can show you on an individual user basis, or anybody that may have privileged access controls to that information. We can stop, alert, and audit that entire thing within minutes of a detection. Edward Snowden would not have left his chair, would have been a bad movie to watch if there was a Brickstore SP involved to stop that insider threat. So again, another component on this is we can set up any share, any access point on excessive access to data itself. So reads, writes, modifies, or even deletes. We can also give what we call a hall pass. So if we know it's an administrative action, and we know that there's an administrator that just deleted an entire directory of, say 1,000 files, that would actually be stopped. And the other administrators or administrators in the network would be alerted and notified that there is an excessive file access going on by a specific user. Now, this may be a known, and we can give that person a hall pass to continue that operation. Or we may have just stopped a insider threat or even a malware attempt at somebody trying to maliciously destroy information or data within the system. Again, all of this is documented and is restorable from the snapshots. When we detect an event, we put a classification or a whole classification on that snapshot, and our snapshots accelerate up to the second and put that classification hold on all information and data until somebody makes or takes an action on the activity. we do not release those holds. So you're guaranteed to get that information back within minutes versus finding out somebody deleted something 6 months from now. That's always a fun one to try to recover. Being able to search and find, a lot of different storage vendors out there, and I've worked with a lot of different storage vendors, being able to find the file or the exact file you're looking for, because sometimes a user does not know. I have this access to this file. I think it was named honey something, but I don't know what version I need or where it went. Since we actually keep a catalog on all the data, we have all the user metadata, all the classification, everything that's ever changed, and we know exactly where the data is at, whether that's local or even in a snapshot from a replicated copy. We give you a catalog so you can search and find for those files and perform restoration straight from our console. All those pieces and components are built into the Brickstore GUI. So again, a big component to this is insider threat. That's a big concern at the federal and even in state and local government agencies, is preventing that insider threat. Now, we can stop ransomware. That's great. But also the insider threat is another entity you got to keep your eye out for. You got to watch and make sure there's nobody trying to steal those secrets and sell them to other countries. Encryption end-to-end, of course, from user to the network, to the data at rest, to the data on disk, from end to end, the entire life cycle is encrypted. When we actually leverage the transparent data migration or transparent data movement capability, which is the S3 archive capability, we also encrypt that information and data on that third party. And the only way to access that information is through the Brickstore appliance. That way we guarantee that we're still watching, even from an archived instance, who's accessing that archived information. Next slide. And then this is where I'll hand it over to Sean.
Yeah, thanks. What a great solution that RackTop and Brickstore brings to an environment to really mitigate disasters at the NAS level. I hope you guys appreciate the story that he's told and how it really, really helps with providing true enterprise security throughout many different levels, especially auditing and encryption, et cetera, and so forth. So let me tell you why Cloudian is the best fit for ransomware protection and why we have the best integration with RackTop and Brickstore. So Cloudian's been around since about 2011. Our flagship product is called Hyperstore. It's a software-defined on-premises S3 native object storage solution. Among our many claims to fame are our abilities to help enterprises build secure, cost-effective, and easy to manage, infinitely scalable private and hybrid cloud storage solutions. Cloudian has some remarkable products. It's not just Hyperstore. We have a suite of products that help you improve data privacy, reduce your costs, easily manage exabytes of storage, integrate with public, hybrid, and private cloud storage solutions. Hyperstore is a software-defined storage solution, which means we can be deployed on really any x86 platform. We're fully heterogeneous. You don't need to use our appliances or Dell's appliances or HP's. You can merge them all together. And with our software, we can stitch those together into a secure private cloud solution. Cloudian, next slide, please. So Cloudian has over 700 proven deployments using our state-of-the-art solutions. We've also won several customer satisfaction awards that prove that our solution is very successful in a diverse range of customer environments. We've had lots of experience in the federal space using our revolutionary solutions. We've seen that a tiny bit of creativity on the customer's part results in extraordinary results. Just leveraging what S3 is and how S3's advanced verbs and advanced storage capabilities can be leveraged in a standard enterprise brings along things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, the capability to do Google-like searches across entire enterprises for storage. That's kind of what we bring with this S3 capability. We provide the most privacy-based storage solution that's on the market, hands down. Data is protected and safe, and it's in a tested and bulletproof environment. Next slide. So we've gone the extra mile. We have seen what other storage providers are providing, and we've seen what the enterprise is requiring. We've gone out and gotten huge amounts of certifications and validations and verifications across a wide swath of what the federal government requires. We've gotten our common criteria EAL2 certification, our FIPS 140-2 validation. We are deployed in FedRAMP capable solutions. So if FedRAMP is a concern of yours, we're not going to be an impedance or a problem with you. Our SEC 17A-4 certification goes with our worm capability, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. This is how we bring true ransomware protection to our customers. We have the capability to be deployed as a truly black box. We don't have a root access. We don't have a shell that ransomware or rogue hackers can get into. We have a highly secured, we call it hyperstore shell. Our object lock capabilities prevent any data from being overwritten. And then our internal firewall means that only port 80 and 443 are exposed, and you can turn off port 80. So only in-flight data that is encrypted comes to us. And then our secure delete feature is something that's interesting. It means that if there is a customer that has TS or secret information and it bleeds or gets exfiltrated or whatever onto an unclassed system, we can securely delete that data very simply, surpassing the NIST 800-88 requirements. Next slide, please. So Amazon S3 is a protocol and an API that's really designed for software-defined storage. We have deployed our solution to be the most compatible storage solution with the S3 API. And Amazon has really evolved as the de facto standard for object storage. It's not just an Amazon product anymore. It's been released out into the wild, and everybody now speaks S3. Being able to talk S3 means that you can integrate a massive amount of products and tools that have been designed for the public cloud privately in your data centers, behind your firewalls, in your racks. The S3 API talks about things like connectivity, access controls, data management and reporting, tiering, encryption. All of those things can be controlled at the application layer, but we've also enabled those capabilities to be deployed on any workload with any data set coming into us. So we have simple checkboxes and policies that basically say any data that comes into this bucket, any data that comes into this environment, any data center that goes to this geography will be encrypted with these keys. Any data that lands on this environment will be encrypted with these keys. It's a multi-tenant environment, but it also brings the enterprises huge amounts of capabilities for orchestration, self-service, interaction with VMware and Tanzu, Kubernetes, data protection, data persistence, and automation. Amazon is 2 to 3 times, Amazon's S3 is 2 to 3 times as large as all of the other object storage APIs that are on the market combined. So that really means that everything that's being developed today, every application that's being developed today, if they want to be competitive in the marketplace, needs to have an S3 tie-in. We are that on-premises version of that S3 capability. And we are the most compatible. We actually have a guarantee that says that if an application was written for Amazon's S3, it will just natively work on us. We also bring the advanced features because we're written on Amazon's S3 API, their SDK. We bring ranged read capabilities, which drastically improves reads across LANs. We bring multi-part uploads, which means that a 10 terabyte file can be cut into small 1 megabyte systems and then hugely parallelized and sent out across a vast number of different arrays, massively increasing bandwidth optimization. And then, of course, this object lock capability. Next slide, please. So our S3 object lock, again, it was designed by Amazon to protect the data up in the public cloud. But because we speak the S3 API natively, we were the first to bring S3 object lock on-premises storage to the market. This brings data immutability, data encryption. It stops ransomware in its tracks. Backups cannot be changed. Once something has been written to us, it is immutable. Not even a rogue administrator that has what they think might be root access to the system, they're coming into what's called a hyperstore secure shell solution, and they cannot modify or change anything on files that have been written to us. It's policy based, so you can set up different buckets that have different policies. Some of these buckets might be protected for 7 days. Some of these buckets might be protected for 7 years. Some of these buckets might be protected for the infinite, like National Archives has a requirement for data storage that's immutable for the lifetime of the Republic for the United States, which is basically infinite. We have that capability to store the data within us. Ransomware becomes ineffective. Object lock is protecting your data. Data cannot be changed or deleted by anybody. And it can be expired. Data can be expired. It's not like you're locking yourself into a forever based on policies by a length of time that you might have. And it says after 7 days, go ahead and delete that data. All right, next slide, please. So we've deployed our solution to be the most secure storage in the marketplace. Like I said, hands down, we have gone extra miles to make sure that we are compliant with pretty much every federal requirement that we can find and GDPR requirements, Europe. We are a hardened storage solution. With our integrated firewall, the bad guys aren't going to see anything that's usable to them. If they do get into the system and are able to exfiltrate data, right? Worm is basically write once, read many. If they do get data and get it out of the system, it's going to be encrypted by AES 256-bit encryption. It's going to be completely useless to them unless they have your key pairs. So we are super hardened, super secure. We've gone the extra miles to get certified and secured. And finally, the next slide. So customers choose us because we're a premium enterprise storage solution. We're straightforward. We're simple. We've been tested across multiple environments, over 700 customers in vast different use case scenarios as backup as a service, as a Dropbox-like service, as iRODS integration. I mean, pretty much everything that you could possibly imagine that an object storage, a large storage solution can be deployed in. We've been tried and tested in those environments. We offer a file and object solution. We have SMB and NFS gateways into our solution for things that don't speak NFS. We can start small, tens of terabytes, and expand out to hundreds of petabytes, even exabytes of storage. And every single bucket that we create can have its own protection policy, its own encryption keys, et cetera, et cetera. This object lock capability brings a next level to being able to protect our storage for our customers that is completely immutable. There is nothing else on the market right now that can provide this level of protection to our customers. We speak multi-cloud, so we can provide a way to tier data out to Glacier, out to Amazon Azure, out to Google very inexpensively, very efficiently. And we actually, because of the way that we have a billing module built into us, we can provide cost modeling for certain workloads. So you can say, does this workload deserve to be on the cloud? Is it going to cost us too much money? Well, you can put it on us, let it churn for 30 days, and see what that workload would cost you in a private cloud, in a public cloud solution, and then provide that information back. If it makes sense, our tiering policies can be utilized and push that data out. Because of the way we can integrate third-party key management solutions, when we push the data out from us, it can stay encrypted with your keys in your site through its entire life cycle. No other products on the market have that capability. And then we are super inexpensive. We are not a standard SAN or a NAS pricing model. We compete with public cloud easily. And then at scale, at the petabyte scale, we compete with things like tape. So that's our Cloudian solution. It is quite amazing. The RackTop solution brings a whole other layer of customer compatibility and ransomware protection to the enterprise. I hope that you've seen what you like, and I'll turn it back over to Rob for final comments and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you guys' insight and information on both Cloudian and RackTop Systems. Looking at the Q&A, we do have a couple questions that have been submitted. I'll answer the first one I got, which I got a couple different times. Yes, as far as the slides that you saw today, we're more than happy to share those once the presentation is done. You can certainly work with your system engineer or account executives in each company, and we can talk and cater more of a downline conversation if need be. The first question I've got in, I think, is a Cloudian question, is how do we ensure our backups are good if we get hit by ransomware?
It's a great question. Yeah. So if ransomware were to hit an organization or an agency, and we have instantiated object lock into the solution, we are simply able to restore from that last good backup set. We're not going to be able to be overwritten. We're not going to be able to have problems. And if the application like Veeam, Commvault, and now NetBackup, they speak S3 object lock, it's simply a matter of hitting the restore button on those applications. If for some reason the application does not speak S3 object lock as the API, and you've enabled object lock on a workload or a data set, it's a simple matter of going through and finding the files and data that you need to restore. Very simply, there's no capability of the ransomware deleting or removing any data that's on the system. Great question. Thank you.
All right, great. Second one, Dave, I think this is going to be yours because you covered it in an earlier slide, but can you describe zero trust?
So in a traditional sense, the zero trust model was basically the identity checking and integrity of, like, say, devices or PCs or systems accessing information and location based, right? So if you think about some of the new policies that are coming out, and really people just putting firewalls and building fences around the infrastructure, that's the old way of thinking of zero trust, right? So that's like a perimeter location. Once you get through the firewall, you connect to the VPN, you're now a trusted entity and you have access, you have keys to the castle, or whatever you have permissions to do on the network, you can now do. The new way of thinking about it is actually every transaction, every device, any action you take from connectivity or even a location based is double checked and checked, a couple different ways and times to verify who you actually are on the network and what resource you're talking to or accessing on the network. So whether that's at the storage layer, at the network layer, or at the perimeter, the real way to really start thinking about zero trust is making sure everything, even when you're a trusted entity within the network, everything you're accessing or touching is also, you're being verified against what your privileged access is truly.
Okay, great. Third question we got is, how does this work in a disaster situation where I've lost a data center to a fire or something? Do I have...
Yeah, that's like two questions for one for me and Sean. So from a brick store, let's say, perspective, if you're just housing the data locally on us and we don't have a third party, of course, snapshot and replication is all asynchronous. So data can be brought back up within minutes at a secondary location. If we are joined, because I kind of think of the brick store and the Cloudian solution together is like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We go good together, especially when it comes to long-term data archival and compliance. But let's say that the data that's been archived off the main system, TDM capability is transparent to the end user that the data has been moved to another location or to another device, such as the Cloudian, and frees up the local storage resources for more project and more data. So you can shrink the footprint of a local NAS and expand out on a better cost per gig on the Cloudian solution. The problem with that is, if my primary site goes offline, all my data is on the Cloudian, and Brickstore is the only thing on the network that has access to that data. It's very simplistic, and that's why we've actually built the flexibility from a cloud, local VM, or even physical device. You can stand up another Brickstore within minutes. It takes about 15 minutes to install that, provide the encryption keys, and we will rehydrate that data right back the way it was in the event of there is a disaster. So all rehydration, everything, and of course there's support's ready to jump into the mix with that.
Yeah, and from a Cloudian perspective, we are a true cloud solution, right? So we're a private cloud, but we're a true cloud solution. So any failures that happen on a server or on a rack or in a data center or across multiple geos can be designed for in our solution. So applications such as RackTop don't necessarily need to understand what's going on behind the scenes. They've written to Cloudian, and Cloudian can be dispersed across multiple data centers, across multiple geographies. And any failure that happens on the system, whether it's a smoking hole in the ground solution or a situation, can simply be mitigated by us routing around the issue. Applications, users don't need to understand what the underlying topology is for the Cloudian solution. We simply can route around the issue. And if and when that data center comes back online, anything that's been migrated or updated at any of the other sites behind the scenes, under the covers, without administrative intervention, is simply rehydrated into the solution. It's a seamless, true private cloud solution.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Well, I don't see any more questions that have popped up that I've got in the Q&A console or the chat. So I think this might be a great time to close down the presentation. Again, I'd like to thank both Sean and Dave for giving the presentations today. And if you guys would like any more information that we didn't cover today, please feel free to reach out to your engineer or your account manager, and we can see what we can do. Of course, you can go out to our websites, Cloudian.com or RackTopSystem.com for more information. But again, on behalf of Cloudian and RackTop Systems, we appreciate you taking time out for attending this webcast. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending upon where you're at today. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.